You were taught that medieval people thought the earth was flat, that Columbus bravely sailed off to prove them wrong. Almost none of that is true. And the part that's least true is the bit about Columbus. Here's what educated Europeans actually knew and when they knew it. Go back to ancient Greece. Not only did they know the earth was a sphere, one of them measured it. Around 240 BC, a scholar named Eratosthenes compared the angle of shadows in two Egyptian cities on the same day, did the geometry, and calculated the circumference of the planet. He got remarkably close, with sticks and shadows more than 2,000 years ago, and that knowledge was never lost. That's the crucial bit. It just carried straight on through. The English monk Bede was writing about the earth as a sphere in the 8th century. In the 13th century, a text called On the Sphere of the World became a standard university textbook across Europe, and it stayed on the syllabus for 400 years. Any medieval student who went near a university was taught explicitly that the world was a ball. They even carried a model of it around. Look at portraits of medieval and Renaissance monarchs. A lot of them are holding a small golden orb topped with a cross. It's called a globus cruciger, and it's a literal representation of the world as a sphere. Kings were holding the answer in their hands while allegedly nobody knew it. So then what on earth was Columbus arguing about? Size. He was arguing about size. Everybody in that room agreed the earth was round. The disagreement was over how big around it was and how far you'd therefore have to sail west to reach Asia. And here's the delicious part. Columbus was wrong. Badly wrong. He cherry-picked the smallest estimates available and convinced himself the planet was far more compact than it is. The scholars who told him the voyage was too far to survive were doing better arithmetic than he was. He didn't succeed because he was right. He survived because there happened to be two entire continents sitting in the gap where he thought Asia would be. He ran into America by luck, while being mistaken about the size of the world, and he went to his grave still insisting he'd reached Asia. So if the flat earth wasn't medieval, where did the story come from? It came from the 19th century, and it was, to a surprising extent, written on purpose. In 1828, the American author Washington Irving published a biography of Columbus. It was popular, it was dramatic, and it was partly invented, including a vivid scene of Columbus standing before hostile, ignorant churchmen who insisted the world was flat. That scene did not happen. Irving essentially made it up because it was a better story. Then later in the century, it got weaponized. A couple of influential writers set out to argue that religion and science had always been locked in war with each other, and the image of a superstitious, flat-earth Middle Ages was perfect ammunition. Their books were enormously widely read. The invented scene hardened into a fact, and from there it walked straight into schoolbooks and stayed for a century, which tells you something a bit uncomfortable about how this works. The Victorians were extremely pleased with themselves. They were living through steam engines, telegraphs, and industrial science, and they wanted a dark, ignorant past to measure their own brilliance against. So they built one. The flat-earth Middle Ages isn't a medieval belief. It's a Victorian flattery device, and we're still repeating it. So here's the refrain. The people you were taught were too ignorant to know the shape of their own planet, had known it for well over 1,000 years, taught it at university, and carried it about in gold as a symbol of power. The century that actually got it wrong about them was the one that invented the story. And it worked so well that 200 years later, you learned it as a fact from people who had no reason to doubt it either. Every era thinks it's the one that finally sees clearly. That's the part that should give you pause.